What have you learned over time to be able to give your mind a break so you just settle? Because you cannot run 200 miles per hour up here all the time. You are wasted.
Well, I mean, gosh, there's so many sayings out there that relate to that. I mean, I think it was Stephen Covey talks about sharpening the saw, right? You can't just saw wood all the time. You got to take the saw out and you got to sharpen the blade, right? Take a break here and there. I love to ride mountain bikes. There was a very famous mountain biker from years ago, Ned Overon. He was the national champion many times. And he used to say this: you don't get strong by working hard. You get strong by resting after having worked hard. So that recovery is critical to your getting stronger and better. And so I went through what we call micro and macro cycles of training. In modern day science for runners, for example, it's called periodization, where you have hard days and lighter days, and hard weeks and light weeks. And so you have higher intensity. Well, that higher intensity is going to tear you down. Then you've got to recover. So you have to lighten up the workload. That makes you stronger for the next go around. And so it becomes more like a sine curve, up and down, up and down. But that sine curve increasingly gets higher and higher. The peaks get higher so long as you get the right rest. If you don't rest, that rate of improvement starts to lag and slow down. And if you looked at it on a graph, the rate of improvement would slow if you don't get the rest that you need. And so the same is true physically. It's also mentally and emotionally. It's really important to have that time away from your sport, your business, your obsession, to be able to emotionally, physically regroup. And sometimes people wear that as a badge of honor. There's certain cultures in the world where
Welcome, everyone. We're back to Fearless Founders, and I'm so excited. Ike and I are very excited because we have, for me, a childhood hero of mine. Not that I was a child, I was already in college, but back in the 1984 Summer Olympics, we had some fantastic gymnasts. Peter Vidmar won 3 medals, 2 golds and 1 silver, and I watched him back then, back in the olden times. And we are so excited to have Peter Vidmar today as our guest. So excited.
I'm honored to be on the program. Thanks for the invitation.
No, you are a trooper. And we were just talking online about how our clients, our viewers, our listeners and followers are going through the hard tunnel of trying to figure out how to make the business succeed, and all the worries and the fears. And we call it a Fearless Founders Club podcast because we want to imbue confidence and tools and experiences. And that's why, Pete, you're so important for us here. Thank you for being here. We got about 15 minutes. Let's see what we can do and navigate this journey together. First of all, please let the audience know, how did you become a gymnast? Was it because mom and dad said, hey, you're not going to be very tall, so you're going to be a gymnast or a jockey? How did that start?
I think my roots came from my father. So my father, John Vidmar, grew up in Southern California. He actually did gymnastics in high school, but I never saw him do gymnastics because when he was 27 years old, well before I was born, he contracted polio. And so my father struggled with the effects of that disease for the rest of his life. He had a number of muscles that didn't work in his body. His left leg was really withered, and he had, with the help of a brace, he had a prominent limp when he walked. And so I never saw him do any gymnastics, but I know he loved the sport. And so I would watch it on television with him as a kid. And then we saw a little ad in the local paper that there were tryouts for a gymnastics program that would be run by a man by the name of Makoto Sakamoto, who was the USA's best gymnast in the country for many years. He had just finished competing at the Munich Olympic Games in 1972 and started coaching gymnastics. I was his first pupil. And so It just looked like fun. Going upside down, flipping looked like fun. And yet I ended up going to a program with a coach who knew what it would take to be an Olympian, because he was a 2-time Olympian. And so right from the start, I had really the best coaching, the best teaching I could have access to. So that's really kind of how I got involved in the sport. And I stayed with my coach for my entire career, from day one at age 11 till my last competition at the Olympic Games at age 23.
Wow.
Wow.
Isn't that fascinating, right?
Yes.
And excuse me, I forgot all my manners. So not only the 3 medals, he was also the youngest in the 1979 World Championship at 18 to get a medal. He's been inducted twice, one of only 3 people into the Olympic Hall of Fame. I think that's the correct terminology, right, Pete?
I better qualify that. It was twice, because once as an individual, and then later they inducted our entire team. So it makes me sound like I was something, super special, but no, I just happened to be on an amazing team, and they inducted us as a team as well later on.
He's a proud papa of 5 now grown children, and ultimately he has been going around the world as a motivational speaker. So we're really lucky to have you. So we're going to dig into one very important topic first.
Sure.
We have a lot of entrepreneurs. First time, they are just going through the Shawshank tunnel to try and make things work, and it's just intense. You can't switch off the brain. During the Olympics and throughout your life, and you've coached many people in life as well as sports, what do you do when your mind is really the most important muscle to have under control? Because you can create stories, you can be crippled, you can have anxiety stop you.
Yes.
And all that talent is kind of choking, doesn't come out, it gets right there. What did you learn about overcoming that barrier and freezing you?
Well, now, granted, my life as an athlete will have some things that are certainly different than building and starting a business. But I think emotionally, there are some things that really helped me. First of all, my coach taught me that the best way to be mentally prepared is to physically prepare. In other words, you got to put the work in. And I could do all the psyching up I want at the day of the competition, but if I haven't really prepared adequately, the truth patrol in your brain will always prevail and say, you could have worked harder. You could have done this better. You could have paid more attention to these details or those details. And so I learned early on that my effort in the gym for the days, the weeks, the months, and even the years before a major event, that was the key to my being mentally and emotionally prepared in competition. And so that way, when I would enter the arena to compete, I could hopefully, not always, but hopefully say to myself, I've done everything I can do. I've got the right to be confident here. And that's exactly how I felt at the actual Olympic Games, because I felt like I had done everything I needed to do physically and mentally to prepare for that moment. But at the same time, things don't always go according to plan in life, right? And I'm sure even more importantly, for someone that's starting a business, there's going to be a lot of stumbling blocks, a lot of hiccups along the way. And I had to learn to accept that failure is part of the process. And I think that for me, and I think for many people that I talk to, I learned much more from my failures than I did from my successes. It's the failure that causes the deeper introspection, the deeper analysis to say, well, what could be done better? What could I change? What should I change? Sometimes when we have too much success, that breeds overconfidence. Oh, I don't need to work on this, that, or that. And so then we end up neglecting things that maybe we really aren't fully prepared to handle. Let me just give you one example. At the World Championships in 1983, going into the horizontal bar finals, I was in second place ahead of all of the Russian and Chinese gymnasts. There was a great gymnast from Japan ahead of me. And I had a combination of skills in my routine that I developed that kind of was my trademark for that event. And that's kind of what got me into the finals and in a position to win a medal. In the warm-up session prior to the actual finals, the skill wasn't going so well. And I started to panic a little bit. Looked at my coach and says, what am I going to do? This is my only big trick. I have to do this. And after consultation and working it all out, I made the decision I'm going to go for the skill. I'm going to go for it. It's my one chance maybe in my life to become a world champion at anything. So why should I play it safe? and guarantee that I don't win the medal. Let's go for it. Right? Logical choice. Now, the guy that was in first place, great gymnast from Japan, he made a mistake right before I went up. So now I knew that if I hit my routine successfully, I'll become the world champion. Kind of a neat thing. And so I began the routine. I did that skill and I missed the bar and I dropped 10 feet to my stomach. And I got back up, finished my routine. I walked away and I was devastated. I thought, is this what I'm made of? My confidence was shot. I had the Olympics 6 months away. And I thought, is this who I am? Will I crack under pressure at the Olympics? I mean, all those self-doubts start to creep in. But I also remember this. I remember as I was walking back from the arena to the hotel, I was all alone in the winter in Budapest, Hungary. And I remember saying to myself, I will never make that mistake again. I've got to stop taking that skill for granted. I didn't train it appropriately. Deep down inside, I knew I should have trained it with more attention to detail and more focus. So for the next 6 months, every day at the end of my workout, I go back to the horizontal bar, work a little bit extra on that skill that I failed on. And I did that same skill at the Olympic Games. And the horizontal bar was one of the events in which I ended up scoring a perfect 10. So looking back, I can say, you know what? I'm so glad I failed. I hated the experience. I was miserable, but I'm so glad I failed because it taught me to really focus in on those things I had to work on to really get better. And so I look back with gratitude that I made that mistake because it enabled me to focus more diligently on what really was the greater need in my performance. And I think that in many cases, I've got a lot of entrepreneurial friends and they will share with me that their mistakes, their initial blunders as they embarked on their venture really helped them to refine what they were creating, the product they're creating or the service they're creating, and it made them better at what they did, and it made their company better.
Fantastic story. If you're okay, I got to go
Yeah,
a little bit
go
deeper
for
on this.
it. I'm packing everything in.
Okay.
Yeah, this is fantastic. Pete, a side trivial question, and then back to this topic.
Yeah.
Side trivial question. In that level of athleticism, is the world's Gold Cup gold medal equivalent or subordinate to the Olympic gold medal?
Well, I mean, the World Championships is a larger competition in terms of number of participants. The Olympics, but it's a qualification for the Olympic Games. So they narrow down some gymnasts that don't quite qualify, narrow down to a smaller group that competes at the Olympics. So you may have 30 teams or 15 teams, 20 teams competing at the World Championships, but there's only 12 teams that actually participate in the Olympic Games. And those numbers will change every 4 years. There's always different rule changes and all. But in terms of prestige, everybody looks at the Olympic. I would come back from the World Championships and you could tell them, oh, I had a great competition. And then people would look at you and say, okay, so now what does that mean for the Olympics? You say, no, this is the World Championships. Yeah, but does that mean you're on the Olympic team? No, the tryouts are coming later. Oh, okay. And they walk away. It's like all that matters to the world is the Olympic Games. But for the real devotees of sport, World Championships are huge. They're huge. World Cups are huge.
Absolutely.
And the Olympic Games are huge.
That's why I asked, but you answered it. What does that mean? Hey, love the preparation. Can you, at least from the perspective of a coach talking to you and training you, what did they tell you mentally to say to yourself to practice mental preparation, mental strength beyond the physical? Is there anything you could share as a tidbit that you've learned over the years? And maybe it's not even from the Olympics, from all the business that you've had.
Yeah. Our motto when I trained was practice as if it's competition, but compete as if it's practice. In other words, every day in the gym, don't just work out. Don't just go through the motions of doing the numbers of routines that you have to do to get ready physically, but try to make sure that every routine you perform in workout is perfect. Now, that's not possible, but make that your goal every day. So practice correctly. Don't just go through the motions, but try to make every routine the best one of your life. And so oftentimes in the gym, I would close my eyes and vividly imagine that this wasn't just a pommel horse routine in the UCLA men's gym. This was the pommel horse routine for the gold medal at the Olympic Games. I would put that kind of pressure on myself to try to create, that situation where you feel the nerves, where you sense the the pressure, the breathing of the crowd on you. You can't replicate that perfectly in any training environment, but you can try to approach that. So practice as if it's competition. Now, when you get to the competition, then you treat it like it's a practice. Oh, it's just another day at the gym. I know what to do. I've done this 1,000 times. And so when I would close my eyes in the competition, I would instead imagine that I was back at the UCLA men's gym. It's the end of the day. There's only 3 people left in the gym. And when I signal the superior judge, in my mind, I'm signaling my coach, the guy that I used to see every day in the gym. And that way you help to get those emotions to kind of calm down a little bit for the actual performance. And you'll notice, I love the recent Winter Olympics, because as I watched it on the Peacock channel, there were times that normally they'd be going to commercial, but it was kind of like the raw feed. And you could watch the athletes, and the camera would be on an athlete who's getting ready to compete. No commentary, no one talking. And I related so well to those athletes, because you'd see them going like this. And you see them moving their head. And what they're doing is they're getting inside themselves, and they're imagining going through each gate on the slalom course, or imagine doing that skill in figure skating. Whatever it is that they're getting ready for, they're rehearsing in their mind, mentally, visually, in a sensory manner where they feel their muscles contracting and moving. And then they walk out there and perform, but they've done it 1,000 times in the gym or on the snow, on the ice, and in their minds. And so you can't just, hope for the best. The preparation begins long before.
I am in awe. Thank you. That was beautiful. I'm writing notes all the time. And my tiny little duplication of understanding happens because I'm in my office. I have guitars around me. I love play. I have a band, Peter. But
Wow.
long story short, if I would learn my songs, it's not any issue when I'm on stage and we're performing with the rest of the guys. You're kind of loose, done it already.
So when it comes to that, for example, the other is practice makes. What does everybody always say? Practice makes?
Perfect.
Yeah, that's not true. Practice makes permanent. Practice makes permanent. And what you practice over and over will become permanent behavior. So if you don't practice by giving your best effort every time, well, don't expect that you're going to give your best effort in the actual competition. So give your best effort in the gym. And so that way your best effort will show itself in the competition. So practice makes permanent. So practice correctly. Try to do everything right every single time, instead of just saying, well, it's good for me physically to kind of go through the motions, and I don't have to point my toes on this one. I don't have to stick my landing on this one. I'm doing the work, right? No, you got to try to do it perfectly every time. And now it's not going to be perfect. It can't. It's not going to be that way. But that focused attention to detail does lead to a better performance when it matters. And the same is true if you're in a business that involves sales, right? If you're in front of a client, every day, well, you want to practice. You want to rehearse. What is it that you're selling? What are you presenting? What product, what service are you presenting to the customer or the buyer or the client? And have you done the homework to make sure that when you're in front of them for that brief moment of time, they're getting your best performance? You know everything about your product or your service, instead of just saying, well, here it is. Take a look at it. And we know people don't do that. But if you really try to refine and hone your skills, then when the moment comes that you have to perform in whatever way you define that, you'll be prepared, or at least more prepared than if you hadn't prepared.
I think I can relate to those things. Like I'm in a SaaS AI. I'm in the product side of things. I'm
Sure.
the engineering side of things. My co-founder is the sales and go to market. From my perspective of things, this is not my first time, but it happens. Your gym equates to how much research I do, how much interaction I do with the customer, so I can put in the work to the product, so that when the time comes and the customer is using the product, that competition time is China. I have to put the work in. The things that you said hit the chord so much for me. Like when what I see from the first time founders sometimes is they think that going back to gym working is measured by hours and the things that they like. You have to put the work on the things that you need to get better at.
Yeah.
Not the things that you're comfortable with all the time. So ability to identify, like when you're at the gym or designing the product that's gonna crush the competition and create it, like you're gonna be the trailblazer, whatever you're building. Like you have to think in those terms, but they sometimes go to, I just need small wins, or I'm comfortable with this domain, I'm just gonna do this. I'm not good at like giving feedback to engineers, or I'm not good at hiring the best engineer, or designing the right feature the right way so that it can scale. People go to their comfort zones.
Right.
But how do you break that? Like what suggestions do you give?
Well, we sometimes we like to avoid our weaknesses, right? We don't like facing our weaknesses. I didn't like it. And in my sport, back when I competed, you had to be an all-arounder. You had to do all 6 of the events, the apparatus, the floor exercise, the pommel horse, the rings, the vault, the parallel bars, and the horizontal bar. And so I would say that a gymnast is only as strong as his weakest event. In other words, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link, right? You could have an incredibly strong chain, but if one link is weak and you pull on it, it's going to break. It's going to break in half. And so you want to strengthen the weakest link first, and then build and then keep working on improving the weaknesses. And so I would look at a young gymnast who maybe he can score in the 9s on all of his events, but he can only score a 7.5 on the pommel horse. I say, you need to spend all your time on pommel horse, because if you can go from a 9.5 to a 9.6, well, that's 1/10 of a point. If you can go from a 7.5 to a 9.5, that's 2 full points. And so realize how much of a benefit there is to really improving on your weaknesses. And too often, I think when it comes to a service or a product, what's most glaring is the weakness that stands out, right? And so if we can try to keep working on eliminating the weaknesses, then the stuff that you're really proud of, that's going to stand out even more, because the glaring weaknesses will go away only if we focus on them and improve on them. And that sometimes is the most unpleasant part. For example, in my sport, no one likes to work on the things they're not good at because it's not fun. And yet that eventually those weaknesses could become a strength, even stronger than the previous strengths. And then you can go back to working on other things that you like to do. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, it does. Yes, it does. Like in the business and product, you don't have one feature. You don't just win in the bar.
Right.
Like it's the product, and same as company, is interconnected pieces together.
Right.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Ike. That was a really good question. I made some notes. Hey, in the journey, Pete, the biggest thing that I found with startups is the inability to actually turn off the hamster wheel at a certain point.
Yeah.
Because you're worrying about this,
Right.
and you're never present for family, for even your employees at certain times. They always see this sort of distant look in the leaders. Ike is laughing.
Yeah, yeah, I've been there before.
I'm focusing on this because I see this right now in all of my clients too. What have you learned over time to be able to give your mind a break so you just settle? Because you cannot run 200 miles per hour up here all the time. You are wasted.
Well, I mean, gosh, there's so many sayings out there that relate to that. I mean, I think it was Stephen Covey talks about sharpening the saw, right? You can't just saw wood all the time. You got to take the saw out and you got to sharpen the blade, right? Take a break here and there. I love to ride mountain bikes. There was a very famous mountain biker from years ago, Ned Overon. He was the national champion many times. And he used to say this: you don't get strong by working hard. You get strong by resting after having worked hard. So that recovery is critical to your getting stronger and better. And so I went through what we call micro and macro cycles of training. In modern day science for runners, for example, it's called periodization, where you have hard days and lighter days, and hard weeks and light weeks. And so you have higher intensity. Well, that higher intensity is going to tear you down. Then you've got to recover. So you have to lighten up the workload. That makes you stronger for the next go around. And so it becomes more like a sine curve, up and down, up and down. But that sine curve increasingly gets higher and higher. The peaks get higher so long as you get the right rest. If you don't rest, that rate of improvement starts to lag and slow down. And if you looked at it on a graph, the rate of improvement would slow if you don't get the rest that you need. And so the same is true physically. It's also mentally and emotionally. It's really important to have that time away from your sport, your business, your obsession, to be able to emotionally, physically regroup. And sometimes people wear that as a badge of honor. There's certain cultures in the world where working, 24/7 and never taking a break is a badge of honor. The problem is it's not productive. Mm-hmm. And in the end, it's more harmful when people don't take those needed breaks and that time to sit back and to ask yourself, why am I doing this in the first place?
Yeah.
And if you've got a family back home and you've got people that you're responsible for, they don't just want the success of this, they want your time. Children and grandchildren, they want your time. They don't want your nice things. They don't care about that. They care about the time that you spend with them. And so I think you have to keep things in balance. And it's not easy. Now, when I was an athlete, I was in my 20s, I could afford to be somewhat self-centered in a way, in that I could devote most of my time to honing my craft of being a good gymnast. I didn't have a family to take care of. I didn't have any work responsibilities other than I was training in the gym. I was on a scholarship and I had to, get grades in school. Other than that, though, it was just kind of me. But later on in life, I don't have any interest in being single-minded towards one business goal, for example, because I knew what it took to try to be the best that I could in the Olympic Games in gymnastics. It took all my efforts and energies. And if I decide to apply that to some other aspect of my life and neglect relationships that I think are really important, then I don't think I'd be happy. Well, I know I wouldn't be happy.
Yeah.
And so finding balance as we move on in life is really a challenge, but it's really critical to our emotional and mental well-being and to our happiness, right? Yeah. I think Stephen Covey also said something to the effect that life's not about accomplishing things. It's about building relationships.
Yeah.
And what I miss most, for example, about my life in gymnastics is not the competition. It's not, winning or losing or the skills that I learned. It's being in the gym with my buddies, the guys that I train with every day. That's what I miss. Sadly, a couple months ago, one of my Olympic teammates passed away. He had a 12-year battle with cancer. And our team doesn't feel the same without Jim Hartung around. And we miss him terribly. But I miss the time in the gym with Jim Hartung and with Bart Connor, Mitch Gaylord, Scott Johnson, Tim Daggett. These are my buddies that I train with. That's what enriched my life as a gymnast. Not the sticking my landing on a ring dismount, but being with people. And so build a culture, surround yourself with people that lift you up, people that bring joy, people that, even in the workplace, right? People that because you're spending all that time there, you might as well enjoy the people you're with, right?
Yeah, I know I'm going to have a comment, but I just have to say one thing just to cap what Pete said, because I truly believe it. I just got back 3 weeks ago and took 7 other leaders with me to Costa Rica for a CEO boot camp with that deliberate reason to get them off the treadmill, the mental hamster wheel. And afterwards, and we did strategy and surfing. So strategy and surf camp, okay? Worked fabulous. On the very first meeting afterwards, when I was meeting with them.
That's called a board meeting, right?
That's a real board meeting, important board meeting. So coming back, I said to one who was there, I said, wow, that's a great idea. In fact, today in our discussion, you had 3 great ideas. Where'd that come from? And he said, I finally got to think while I was in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
Instead of putting out fires, right? All the time. Right. And I said, wow, then it did work. Yep, that absolutely worked.
Fantastic.
You need to sharpen the saw.
Yeah.
You need to remove the grind that people too often tout as, look, I'm important. My value is proportional to the amount of face time that I give at work. And that's not the right thing to do. Ike, you had a comment. I know.
Yeah, I know this is, Peter, when you said, ask yourself, why are you doing this to begin with, is a very powerful question. Mm-hmm. But I also know at the same time that some of the founders are going to ask this question to themselves, and then they're going to say, well, the reason I work 18-hour days because I can provide them to my family later on, not now.
Yeah.
To that founder, you're kidding yourself. You're lying to yourself. Wake up. That's not the answer. So I just want to call this out in a very simple terms to them that's not the real answer.
Right. Yeah.
So you need to find the real reason you're doing this, and then answer properly.
Children want time. They want your time. Yeah. They don't want your car. They want time.
Yeah. And I used to be on airplanes, Ike, and you know this. I've told you this. Building a business, and I was gone 50% of the time overseas for 3 years, Pete. And back in those days, you had to wear suits on the plane, and everyone was smoking. training.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Can you
Yeah.
just see that, right? And back then there was no TV infotainment, whatever.
Yeah, no.
So you just had whatever was the Sky magazine or
Yeah, yeah.
Reader's Digest, and I would read
I've got
that.
9 million frequent flyer miles, Benoit.
Oh,
So
I'm
it's
sorry
nuts.
you have that horrible
Yeah,
distinction.
I'm radioactive, I think.
Yeah. So listen to this. I would pick up the Reader's Digest that was the back of the plane, and I'd go straight to the funny stories and then the heartwarming stories of people. And I
Yeah.
would cry
Yeah.
knowing that I was, as the plane took off, I was leaving my babies behind again.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
there's no substitute. Ike is right. Do not fool yourself.
Yeah, just to complete the circle, Peter, you also said, you rest after a hard workout. So
Yeah.
we are not suggesting to anybody that's starting a business, building a business, that, don't work too hard, just
Yeah,
spend
no.
2% of your time with family. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about go as hard as you can and then take the time, though, that resting time
Right.
efficiently, and then get back again, because if you
Right.
don't have that, then you won't be
Yeah,
able to get back.
compartmentalize
Right?
it. When you're home, right? When you're be in the moment with your loved ones, be in the moment with your friends, be in the moment on your job, and be focused at what you're doing. But when you get home, give the children the time that they want from their father or mother, whoever's watching this.
On that note, Pete, somehow or another in work, there is some level of internal distinction that leaders make that getting help from a coach is bad. It shows weakness. It shows that you're not good enough. And yet everyone knows that top tier athletes world over have coaches.
Yeah.
Right?
Name one athlete in the world in any sport that was successful that never had a coach. One. Out of the millions and millions of athletes, name one.
Yeah.
You can't.
And it's not, I'm not making that statement up for a self aggrandizement. No, I'm just saying that there's a level of improvement of smart deployment of skills and or gaps that come around when somebody can objectively help you. It could be, and in many cases for us, it's our spouse who does the most impact, right?
Yeah.
The best coach. But there's something about, particularly the men, I sense, that there's a level of hubris that stops them from saying, look, in order for me to be even better, I could do with some catalyst, some help, some enzyme to accelerate. Right? And you've seen this.
Someone to be there that you trust that can tell you hard things that maybe you don't want to hear.
Yes.
And I mean, there were times that in my training where I was convinced that I would go overseas and I'd see a gymnast perform a skill and go, I want to do that skill. I can do that. And then my coach would patiently watch me try to develop that skill over maybe a week or two. And finally he'd say, Peter, just so you know, you're never going to do that skill. He says, you don't have what it takes to do that. I mean, because everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, and he knew my strengths, but he also knew my weaknesses, and says, I know it's noble that you want to do it. It's great, but it's not time well spent. Let's focus on something else. And I hated hearing that, but I'd always walk away going, oh, he's so right. Oh. And once I accepted that, then I could move on to something else. But sometimes you need someone to tell you hard things, and you got to be willing to accept that counsel and that advice as well.
It's an important message to all of our followers and listeners and viewers, because I found that the older I get, man, I should have sought help faster, quicker. Yeah. I should have got guidance. I should have went and got multiple mentors that I could emulate and learn from. You're just making it harder on yourself instead of being smarter. Yeah. And it's just something for everyone to consider.
You save a lot of, there's a lot of trial and error and time that can be saved in doing that, right? If I didn't have my coach, I probably worked on that skill for another year and found out that I had to find out the hard way. No, that's not in the cards for you, Peter. Instead, have someone that can objectively say, you know what, let's take a look at this. Maybe you should switch gears. Maybe you should go in a different direction. And sometimes all we need is that one suggestion from someone we trust to say, yeah, you're right. And then that saves us all the heartache of trying to grunt through something that maybe we're not really prepared to take on.
And I'm going to go even further to say that in many cases, that outside perspective can highlight the imbalance, not just because of work and focusing on strengths versus whatever, but imbalance in life, imbalance in the relationship at home, imbalance in health. I've seen many times that I cannot give any more coaching on professional. Man, you've been looking so tired lately. What is going on with you?
Yeah.
Why are you always so almost in a zombie state? And in 3 cases, Pete, not work related, but it shows up at work, right? One particular client ended up having real mental health issues. 2 of them had low testosterone.
Oh, wow.
Wondering what is going on, and they never would have looked at that. And it wasn't work related, but it affects work, or it affects family life and everything else, right? And that's the level of just asking for help sooner. Everyone who's listening, get help sooner. We're talking to a world-class Olympian here who couldn't have made it without a coach. Let's all think about how can we get smarter along the journey at every stage. That's my 2 bits for the.
It's actually a sign of strength to seek help.
Yeah,
it's the opposite. I think it's a sign of strength and character to say, you know what, maybe I can't do this by myself. Maybe I need some extra help. And then once that happens, that kind of opens the door to possibilities that would not have existed had we not reached out for assistance and help.
In the journey of becoming world class, everyone in our entrepreneurial world wants to make an impact, wants to make a difference, a legacy, leave something behind. And that's why I call being an entrepreneur the biggest underdog role in the world, because there's so many things against you, right? Never mind time pressures, not enough cash, not enough experience, not enough talent on the team, competition coming with new stuff. Yep, Ike is rolling his eyes.
I can 100 no doubt.
Yeah, it is the biggest underdog role around. With that said, and particularly with your experience, can you share your advice and stories about when people don't believe in you, that you can do it, how you can continue to propel yourself against all odds? And I'm talking about adults here now, adults versus the kids starting out in dance or gymnastics. How can you persevere? This is a topic of tenacity. This is a topic of self-help. This is a topic of resilience, because you've noticed a lot of people, it's tough now when social media says you're not good enough. And I'm saying, no, you're great enough, not just good enough. How can we give ourselves injections?
Well, it's the right balance, I think, of confidence and effort. Effort comes first. Effort will lead, and the effort will, the effective effort will lead to more confidence. But we, for example, our team, you mentioned at the beginning, as you introduced me, that we won a bronze medal in 1979 in the World Championships. I was the youngest kid on the team for the USA. We won the bronze medal at the World Championships. First time in 40-something years that we'd won a medal at the World Championships as a team. Now, the next year was 1980. We had to boycott those Olympic Games. I was a member of that 80 Olympic team. We didn't get a chance to compete. But we're also in a sport that involves judges. And the world athletic community did not like the United States of America for boycotting the Olympic Games. Many other countries followed suit. And so the next World Championships in 1981, we couldn't get a good score to save our lives. We were I think fifth went from third to fifth at the World Championships. And then the next World Championships in 83, we were fourth, still didn't win a medal. But we knew we had a good team. And yet the scores didn't really reflect that in the competitions at times. It was really hard. And yet we persevered. Now, there were 6 of us on this team. We were the same 6 guys, it seemed, every year that made the U.S. team as the top 6. So we were becoming a very cohesive group, very tightly knit team. And I remember when Sports Illustrated, when it was a magazine, and Sports Illustrated actually had their Olympic predictions. They predicted that we were going to sneak up there and win the bronze medal as a team. And I had a distant chance to maybe win a bronze medal, I think, on the pommel horse. And that was it. And then a couple of my teammates had a chance maybe for a medal here and there. So you look at the predictions from the experts, and that's what they said about us. But I remember we put the work in. Our workouts were doing incredible. We were going incredibly well, our workouts. And when we got to the Olympic Village, and we were going through the workout sessions prior to the competition beginning, we walked out of the gym one day after having watched the People's Republic of China, the reigning world champions, in their workout session and they looked really good. But we thought, so do we. We do too. And I remember Jim Hartung, may he rest in peace, who just passed away, said out loud, I think we can beat these guys. Now, you're waiting for a reporter to hear that and then put it, in the newspaper the next day and think, oh, don't say that. But when he said that, in a way, it kind of broke the ice. In a way, it enabled the rest of us to say, yeah, Jim, we can do this. We can do this. And so what everybody else had to say about us all of a sudden now became completely irrelevant. What mattered was our preparation and our confidence. We had prepared, and now we had the confidence to match that. And we ended up winning the gold medal. And so now it's not always going to be that way, but thank goodness it was for me and my teammates that day.
Fantastic, right? Can you see why Pete's so magical, right? Yeah. Thank you, Pete. You're dead on. In a short amount of time, you've given us hope. For me, relived that magical moment during the summer of LA in the heat. I remember that.
Bino, can I ask one more question?
Yes.
You talked about your teammates a lot.
Yeah.
Any advice to our founders who to surround themselves with, whether it's their executive team or employees they hire, or partners they bring in, co-founders? Any advice? How you what mental model?
I would say surround yourself with people that share the same dreams and goals and objectives that you do, and that have that team mentality. And I share that in the context of, yes, we had a team, correct, but it's made up of a group of individuals. And while I'm competing with my teammates for the team gold medal, I am simultaneously competing against them for the individual medals that follow the team competition. So I've got to beat my best friend if I want to win the gold medal on the pommel horse. So in the gym every day, should I give him advice? Should he give me advice? Because what advice he gives me might be exactly what I need to beat him, and vice versa. So are we going to share information like that? Well, we did, because we loved each other, first of all, and we knew that if we could win the team gold medal for the rest of our lives, each one of us could go home with an Olympic gold medal, because they give one to every team member, right? And so collectively then we pooled our resources. What good does it do me if I place 9th and I beat my teammate and he got 10th, if we don't win the gold medal? I'd rather get 3rd and my teammate get 1st if we can win the team gold medal. So we pushed aside the individual, our individual goals for the sake of that team goal. Now, how does that relate to a company? That's up for each individual to decide, but there's only going to be one CEO. You don't have 3 CEOs in a company. There's only going to be one CFO. And so if all we care about is attaining that one position in a company, as opposed to trying to see the company succeed, if the company succeeds, everybody is blessed by that. Everybody succeeds. If all we care about is a title or a position, then maybe some things might fall by the wayside that shouldn't be falling by the wayside. And so having that team, and surround yourself with people that share your vision, that share the vision of the organization and the vision of the product or the service that you're providing, and then all the other stuff will take care of itself. Everything else will take care of itself. At least that's how it was with our team.
That was brilliant, huh, Ike? Ultimately, it's getting everyone on the same road with the same vision, culture, match, everything. You're all in it together. This is not an
and just like the team getting a gold medal, when the company is successful, when you're serving customers, it's not the CEO or CFO, it's the whole team gets the gold medal. If the goal is to get the gold medal from the customers, investors, whoever that's going to benefit from this is the whole team. So you better help your teammates. Your CFO helps CEO, CEO helps CTO. Yeah.
And the stakes are higher in business, because if you get second place in a competition at the Olympics, you get a silver medal. But if you're trying to close a deal and you don't get the sale and your competitor gets the sale, they don't give you a silver medal. They get the gold, you get nothing, right? So
yes, but
how do you work together to try to make sure that the team as a group, that you can all be successful together, right?
That's true, but you also have one more advantage in business. You don't have to play somebody else's rules. You can create your own rules, create your own game, and be the gold medalist in your own game that you design.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Both of you. Peter, thank you. Thank you. Finally got you. Thank you so much. What a beautiful
privilege to be on this program.
Thank you. What a beautiful session together. Thank you for the wisdom and the enjoyment, and for your love of the sport and the nature of people. And everybody listening, thank you for joining us. Please share this with others, subscribe, and we look forward to the next session. Peter, thank you again.
Thank you.